Okay, this is Jesse. Yeah, I think this looks about the same as the last one. You were saying you had struggled with the Arnold thing. I mean, I don't even know if Arnold is absolutely necessary for this. I think that, this could be a bit lighter here. Um, the tops of the surfaces. I mean, there's a skylight, so you'd expect the tops of things actually to be the brightest, if anything, where it more seems like the light's coming from the side. But let's see if we can troubleshoot some of the Arnold stuff. So I was able to get the background to render in Arnold, and I kind of played with the lighting a little bit and got a somewhat different look that you could try. And basically what I've done is to, for this surface where we weren't seeing, um, what I did was I went to the hypershade and then I cleared everything out and mapped the surface on the selected object. And then I took this, which was a Lambert before. I can just show that again. Lambert. Okay, so what it was like before was you had that like that. And then, with this open in here, I changed it to an AI standard surface. And then connected the color to base color, if you want to see that more closely there. Out color, let's do it again. Just drag this here. And then that rendered out. And then for the lighting, I just went to lights and I deleted everything and just did the Arnold lights, physical sky, just default. And oh, and one last thing, this was very important. I think this was limiting your lighting before, is that I turned off, for this selected surface here, I turned off cast shadows, because anything like the sky dome outside of that would be blocked by the surface if it's casting shadows. So I turned that off and then rendered it out and got that. So that gives you a few ideas of what you could play with on that. As far as the animation, I think I mentioned this before. It looks like you've got still a lot of sort of step tangent stuff going on in here. And it looks kind of poppy. So what I would do, and I believe I showed this before, is select all, double click, right mouse click, tangent, auto, and I think that should look smoother. Hide these curves. And I think I also mentioned before that the steps look like they could use some work. They're kind of just jumping all over the place and sliding, and you sort of want one foot to be planted while the other one goes forward and not have the feet slide around. So you could touch up the animation as well. This is Natalie. Yeah, I think the render's looking alright. I think the main thing is that the animation could use some more. I mean, you could probably up it's a little grainy, you could probably up some of your anti-aliasing in the render. Let's take a look and see what you've got. So it looks like you're using the default settings here, and I think you'll find, see how long this takes to render. It's not too bad. Render time. Actually, when I do it small like that, it looks pretty good. I don't see the green. I think when you do it full size, that's where I saw more grain. And somehow this still looks cleaner than the sequence did to me. Wonder if we can get anything better going with that. if we, let's say 4 in the diffuse, and let's just render that region and see if it makes any difference. Doesn't seem to want to render region for me. Oh, looks about the same. Not sure. We could try upping the camera A, but it's not bad. I think the big thing is the animation needs a lot of work. It sort of looks like slow motion, and you don't have the root or the neck of the spine involved. So I think you could do a lot more animation on the character. But we've talked about that in previous modules. So you could just refer back to that. I don't need to review that again. I don't think because I don't think much has changed. But that would be the main thing I think to work on. The lighting looks okay. Yeah, I think overall you're getting a pretty decent look on this. I think, on the last module critique, I talked about trying to do something different with the cameras. So just refer back to that. Basically, the camera's flying around too much, and you should just use static cameras in less different positions. But I think the lighting's good. I think for the rendering, yeah, it's looking real grainy. So you're just gonna have to experiment with upping those anti-aliasing settings and seeing if you can get a better result, because you're getting all this kind of little bits everywhere. Let's take a quick. So I wasn't able to get the textures to relink because they weren't in the source images directory of the same project as the my scene file. But anyway, we can still see the grain, and looking at the settings here, it's actually lower than the default, because I think the default camera is 3. And let's go up on the diffuse and see if that does anything. Yeah, I think that's already better than it was. I don't know why this doesn't want to. Let's re-render the whole thing. Well, I don't have the patience to render the whole thing, but you can pretty clearly see the difference between that and the area that's been rendered. So yeah, it's just a question of upping your anti-aliasing samples. So you probably want to do that. And yeah, and just if you look at the critique from the last module, I showed how to simplify the camera movements, because the cameras are flying around way too much in this right now. But other than that, the lighting looks pretty good. This is K. Okay. Yeah, I think the lighting looks good. I think the render, as you mentioned, it sounded like you were struggling with some of the grain and stuff. It does seem to be kind of dancing around on the ground there. On the last critique, I mentioned kind of simplifying the cameras, because the camera's flying around much too much. So take a look at that critique. But let's see if we can do anything about this floor. Okay, I'm in the Maya file. Let's take a look at the render view and do a snapshot of, I think it's this one. And let's do a bit of the floor here and try to render that. Alright, that's probably enough. So I'll keep that, and let's take a look first at the settings. And yeah, you've kind of got pretty low settings, so I'd start by upping the diffuse here, and let's do that again. And I can see that already that looks better. Whoops. So the other thing you could do is replace the material with a AI standard surface and see if you get better results with that. But I think it's just a question of increasing the samples. You should get a better result. But I think the lighting looks good. So yeah, maybe it's just mostly render settings. Let's go back to the movie. Yeah, make sure to simplify these cameras like I showed in the video for the last module. I think the animation could use some work as well, but we're kind of getting late to do that. But you know, like when you look at this walk, you know, get the elbows and wrists involved in that walk. Her arms look really stiff, and her legs kind of move a little bit too much for the size of the steps she's making. But the kneel down looks good. Okay, but yeah, I would say simplify camera so you just have a couple shots, and then increase those sampling settings to get rid of the green. Other than that, let's look. Next up is Warren. Nice, really great. I think the sound effects great. The dust adds a lot. Lighting looks good. I like the effects a lot. Let's watch that one more time. Yeah, I think one thing I'm just noticing now is maybe a bit too shiny on the skin. Maybe take the specular down on the skin a little bit. And then with this animation, try making your blinks a lot faster, and your or at least some of them, because it looks a little bit. People don't normally move their lids that slowly. Yeah, but really great work. You had asked about the alpha channel for the background, which I answered separately in a mail, but just for everyone's benefit. I'm going to render this out really small. I'll just use like a 10% test resolution and render that just so this is quicker. I'll get the point across, so that's really fast. So you can see the image. If I click here, this will show me the alpha channel, which I can see is solid white, which is useless. So to fix that and get the alpha channel back so that you can just drop whatever background you want in After Effects or Nuke or whatever, there's a couple things to do. First, in the render settings, make sure that the alpha channel is checked there. And then the other issue is that there's this sky dome in here. So if you look, there's actually two of these sky dome things. So in the attribute editor for those, we need to turn the camera visibility down to 0. And let's just make sure we do it for both so that they don't show up in the render. And now I'll render, so you see again, that's just solid white. I can render again. Okay, and you already noticed the background is black, and when I look at the alpha channel, I've got a real alpha channel. And that way you can just drop that, you know, in After Effects, put another layer behind it. You can put whatever background you want behind there. But great work on this, really good piece. Okay, this is Anton. It's looking really good. I think it really looks like daylight is hitting from there. The glass turned out pretty well. I think that the only thing to do is just up a lot of the samples to get a prettier render. I think it's okay as it is. It's just a little grainy, showing up a lot on his pants, I think. Um, I like the holds here. Yeah, I think the animation's really good too. Um, you wanted a little more on feedback on the animation. I like these holds. I think the holds are a little too frozen. You might have like maybe just kind of like a breath in there. When he's doing this, for example, just a little bit. Maybe just see the chest moving, a little bit of breath. Maybe slightly shifting the weight, just a little bit of movement to keep him more alive. But it's really good you're doing holds. There's some serious motion blur. There's something about this walk that's funny to me, and I'm not sure what it is. Yeah, it looks sort of like both feet are moving at the same time. Let's take a look in the. So yeah, I'm in the My file. One thing you can do on these feet is a little more of his like between here and here, you can start to use the roll, to get that starting to push up. So, for example, maybe leave it for a frame or so, and then, by here, you kind of roll that up. And you can also, the other thing is to land more on the heel. I think that's, so when you land, you can use the roll for that too, actually. You can land here. Maybe roll it back a little bit there. So see how the foot sort of, you hide the curve so you can see what's happening better. See how it lands on the heel, goes flat, and then rolls up. And I think you can't really see that other footfall, but yeah, there's something about this stretch that feels a little off balance. Let me see it from another angle. Yeah, I mean, it's like it sort of looks like he would fall backwards there. So maybe counter that with counter the rest of the arch by bending this forward a little bit. Maybe moving these forward some too. Let's see if that looks better from this. Yeah, I mean, it's intersecting the thing, but whoa, yeah. So yeah, that's the next keyframe, which I didn't edit. But yeah, I think he's leaning back too far. And the thing is, if you wanted to lean him back that far, you need to somehow counterbalance it like that, which looks a little weird, but at least it sort of seems like he could potentially remain standing there. So if you wanted to tilt him back that far, you've got to put his center of gravity forward so that he doesn't fall down. So anyways, play with those poses and the footfalls, and those would be some good improvements. This is Julia. Yeah, I think this came out pretty well. like some of the others, you could up the anti-aliasing. And there's something like, I'm wondering if he's faceted like this just because it's not in smooth mode, or what's going on with that. Let's take a look. So here I am in the My file. Yeah, I mean, if you smooth this stuff, I'm just, when I say smooth, I just mean pressing 3. Um, it'll smoothen the Arnold render. So um, let's do just a quick render. That should be enough to see, but you can see how we smooth there, and on this you can see all that faceting, which is yeah, especially noticeable with the light on it when he rotates around. I also might decrease the specularity on the materials on the clothing. It's very shiny. Everything's very shiny. Um, so, for example, let's just map materials and selected objects. Yeah, but blend. I mean, if you can, I wouldn't tend to use this blend, but I would just knock that down completely and make it not so shiny and reflective, and kind of do that for anything like clothing or anything that's not a shiny surface. You don't want so much specular. So take those down, make sure you select the surfaces and hit 3 to be in smooth preview so Arnold can render it that way. And yeah, I think maybe lighten up the scene a little bit. It's a bit dark, but overall good work. This is Nathan. Yeah, I think it turned out alright. It still feels a little slow to me, the animation. I think it could be sped up, but everything's got a nice look to it. I think the character is too dark, so you might want to get more light on him. I don't know if that was still something to do with the normal map problem you were having, that it looks so dark, but yeah, if not, try just getting some more light on him. But overall, I think it looks pretty good. I mean, the whole scene really came together. I like the shadow shapes you've got going on, and I think that looks good. But just more light on the character, more light on his clothing and face would be the main thing. I would go ahead and get rid of the normal maps for now, just to get everything to render out so you can see it, because I guess that's what's making them dark. But yeah, besides that, I think it came together pretty well. It looks pretty good. I think the legs kind of penetrate the chair a little bit. I'm just noticing that's kind of something to look out for. I do like the subtlety in the movement of his hand, although it does look a little bit like slow motion the way he's moving.